You know that feeling when you've bent over backwards for someone for years, paid their bills, bailed them out, defended them, and then suddenly you're the problem? When the moment you finally say no, they call you controlling or toxic. Now imagine that someone is your own child. Imagine opening your phone to find your son has blocked your number, cut you off everywhere, and is online claiming you never did anything for him, all while you're still paying his rent. So I stopped completely. And what happened next when the person who used me for years had to stand on his own for the first time? Something I never could have predicted. My name's Karen. I'm 58, and this is the Reddit-style family drama of how my only son cut me off after I paid his bills for years. So eventually, I let him fail. If you've ever doom-scrolled AITA relationships, or those toxic family revenge threads, you know the eternal debate. Where's the line between helping and enabling? I didn't know that line when I became a mom at 22. All I knew was that I wanted my kid to have everything I never had to have it, if it meant breaking myself to give it to him. I grew up poor. Not no vacations, poor counting quarters for gas, and praying the lights stayed on poor. My parents' fights were basically unpaid bills thrown across the table. That's why I made myself two promises. My kid would never feel like a burden, and I would show up for him no matter what. When Ethan was little, he made that easy. Sweet kid, sensitive, the type who fell asleep on my chest and cried if he hurt someone's feelings. I worked 2 jobs receptionist by day. Diner at night, Tan still came home to glue together his school projects. Exhausted. Always. Proud. Absolutely. I thought hard work plus love equals stable family. The first red flag didn't even look like one. In high school, Ethan started slipping late assignments, skipped classes, sketchy friends. Whenever the school called, he'd snap. You don't get how much pressure I'm under. I didn't want to become the overbearing parent you see in those nightmare Reddit stories, so I overcorrected. I did his laundry, paid his fees, emailed his teachers. I even wrote an essay with him, meaning I finished it alone at 2 a.m. It only escalated from there. Senior year, he failed 2 classes and didn't graduate. I was crushed. He acted like it was a paperwork error. I'll get my GED, he shrugged. We argued, but when he needed money, gas, food, just $50, I always caved. Every swipe of my card felt like proof I wasn't like those parents who toss their kids out after one mistake. After high school, he ricocheted between plans like a pinball, community college, taking a break, starting a sneaker reselling business, crypto because a YouTuber hyped it. Every time he abandoned a plan, I funded the fallout car insurance, phone bill, credit card debt, parking tickets he forgot about. I even took out a small personal loan just to stay afloat, though I never told him. Then came the moment I will never forget. One night right after I covered yet another overdraft, he said, completely casual, if you hadn't raised me so stressed about money, maybe I wouldn't struggle with it now. I just stood there holding my wallet like he'd slapped me. After years of carrying him, he blamed me for the weight he refused to lift. I wanted to scream. Instead, I swallowed it, said, "Okay, Ethan," and drove home in silence. Over the years, the money I gave him stopped feeling like a favor and started feeling normal. That's the terrifying part. When you read a betrayal story or some AITA post about a toxic family member, you imagine there's a clear moment where the line gets crossed, but real life doesn't work like that. It creeps 200 here, 500 there, just until Friday that never comes. I stopped buying myself new clothes. I cooked cheaper meals. I pushed off dental appointments. I smiled at my friends and said I was fine. None of them knew that half my paycheck disappeared into Ethan's chaos. When he moved out at 24, I thought maybe things would finally shift. He got an apartment, a delivery job, a friend to split rent. For a few months, I let myself breathe. I even told my sister, he's figuring it out. Slowly, but he's getting there. She just said, "Karen, don't let him turn you into the villain." I laughed it off. How could my own son see me as anything but the mom who always showed up? Think the calls started again? "Mom, my paycheck was short. Can you spot me my rent?" "Mom, my roommate bailed. I'm covering more now." My car broke down. Can't get to work. I kept telling myself it was temporary. I wired money. I paid his landlord directly when he said he was embarrassed. I stacked more debt onto my credit card, promising myself I'd pay it off someday. My statements started to look like phone numbers. One afternoon, I stopped by his place with groceries. I expected stress, effort, something. Instead, I walked into a living room with a brand new gaming console. Takeout containers everywhere. And my son yelling into a headset in front of a giant TV. He paused the game long enough to mumble, "Thanks. Just put the food in the kitchen." No hug, no eye contact. Just entitlement. Driving home, my hands shook on the wheel. Every "I swear I'll pay you back" replayed in my head, and I finally saw the truth. He'd never meant any of it. To him, I was a bank with no interest rate, a safety net that never tore, a background character enabling his freedom. That night, for the first time, I sat down and added everything up. Rent, utilities, groceries, repairs, credit cards, cash transfers. The number on the page made my stomach drop. I had given my son over $30,000. I cried not for the money, but for what it represented. Every dollar was a night I didn't sleep, a trip I didn't take. A part of my future I quietly gave away so he wouldn't feel the fear I grew up with. And still, in his eyes, I was the anxious, nagging mom who needed to relax. The final straw came weeks later. I was half watching some YouTube Reddit stories when I saw an Instagram story from Ethan. A black screen with text had to cut off my manipulative mom. Tired of being controlled. Sometimes family is the most toxic. My jaw dropped. Manipulative me? The next story was a screenshot of a text argument from a few days earlier where I said I couldn't afford his full rent this month. He cropped out the part where I said, "I love you. But I'm drowning here too." Underneath, he wrote, "Funny how people suddenly can't help after years of guilt-tripping you." I stared at the screen, and something in me shifted. I didn't scream. I didn't defend myself. I just sat there in my quiet living room, listening to the fridge hum, realizing that in his mind, I wasn't a person anymore. I was an ATM with feelings he didn't have time for. And now that I'd finally started saying no, he'd rewritten the story so he could still be the victim. That was the moment I knew I had to stop. Not just for my bank account, but for my sanity. The next day, Ethan texted me as if nothing had happened. "Hey, rent's due Friday. I'm short $700. Can you send it by Thursday?" No apology. No acknowledgement. Just expectation. I stared at the screen. Before, I would have sighed, cursed under my breath, and sent the money anyway. This time, I typed something different. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I can't pay your bills anymore. I've done it for years and I'm in debt because of it. You're an adult now. You have to handle this on your own." The typing dots appeared, disappeared, reappeared. Then his message came in one long, furious block. "Wow, after everything, this is how you treat your son. You know I'm struggling. You know my job is unstable. You literally raised me to depend on you, and now you're punishing me for it. You're unbelievable. I'm done with your guilt trips and control. Don't contact me again." Before I could respond, the chat went gray, blocked everywhere. Within minutes, he'd scrubbed me from his social media. Just like that, in his version of events, I was the villain in some dramatic relationships post. For 3 days, I barely slept. I drifted through the house, touching old Halloween photos, kindergarten art projects, his almost missed high school graduation. I replayed every hug and "love you, Mom." Then I replayed the last few years, the demands, the entitlement, the disrespect, the way he'd twisted my help into control. And then I did something the internet would probably call satisfying revenge, even though it felt less like revenge and more like finally dropping a burning rope. I called his landlord. We'd spoken before, back when I paid his rent directly, so she recognized my name. I told her calmly that I would no longer be responsible for any of Ethan's bills. That any arrangements were strictly between them now. She paused, then said, "Honestly, I'm not surprised. Thank you for telling me. She actually sounded relieved. Apparently, Ethan had been late multiple times and used me as the excuse. My mom will cover it, she always does. The next month, I did nothing. No transfers, no rescues. No, just this once. When my phone stayed silent, part of me hoped he'd figured it out and magically turned into a responsible adult. The truth arrived via my sister. Ethan showed up at Mom's house, she said, furious. Said you abandoned him. Said you're letting him drown? What did you say? I asked. I told him he's almost 30 and it's not your job to keep saving him. He stormed out. A week later, my cousin told me Ethan had posted on some family drama subreddit. No names, but the details were unmistakably ours. He painted himself as the betrayed son whose mother suddenly stopped paying his bills after promising to always be. There, the comments were splitsome, calling the mom heartless. Others pointing out that no parent is obligated to bankroll an adult forever. I didn't respond. I read it once, closed the tab, and sat in silence. That was the real beginning of my revenge, not the flashy kind where people hack accounts or spill secrets, but the quiet kind, letting reality do what my money had been stopping it from doing. Letting his choices finally catch up to him. 2 months after I cut him off, I got a text from an unknown number. Ethan, don't freak out. I had to borrow a friend's phone. My heart thudded. I typed, "Are you okay?" His reply came fast. "I got evicted. I need a place to stay for a few weeks. I'm coming over." Not, "Can I come over?" Not, "Is it okay?" Just a statement like the old rules still applied, like my home was still his safety net. I stared at the message for a long time. This was the moment. The fork in the road between falling back into the same cycle, or finally letting him face the life he'd built. When he showed up at my door that evening, he looked tired. Not just physically, but worn down. Still, there was a spark of arrogance in his eyes, like he expected me to fold the second I saw him. He walked in without waiting to be invited and dropped his backpack on the floor. "So, what's for dinner?" he asked, like the last few months hadn't happened. I took a deep breath and said, "Ethan, sit down. We need to talk." He rolled his eyes, but he sat. I told him calmly everything I'd been holding inside. I told him about the $30,000 I'd spent, about the debt, about the nights I cried, about reading his posts and stories calling me manipulative and toxic. His face changed from annoyance to discomfort to anger within minutes. "That's not fair," he said. "You chose to help. I never asked you to go into debt, but you did ask me to pay your bills," I replied. "You did ask me to fix every mess. And when I started to say no, you cut me off and told the world I was abusive. That's not help anymore, Ethan. That's exploitation." He clenched his jaw. "So what? You're just going to let me be homeless?" There it was. The accusation. The assumption that if I didn't fix this, I was a bad mother. I felt that familiar wave of guilt rising, but I pushed through it. "I'm not going to let you be homeless," I said slowly. "You can stay here for 1 week. 7 days. During that time, you will apply for jobs, call shelters if you need to, look at shared housing. But I will not pay for another apartment. I will not cover your rent. I will not take out more loans for you. This is it, Ethan. I'm done being your financial backup plan." He exploded. He accused me of abandoning him, of setting him up to fail, of being petty and vengeful. He brought up things from years ago, twisted conversations, half-remembered moments. At one point he shouted, "You're doing this to punish me for speaking my truth." I stayed quiet until he was finished. Then I said, "No, I'm finally letting your actions have consequences." For a few days, he stayed in the guest room, stomping around the house, slamming doors, barely speaking to me. I heard him on the phone complaining to friends, saying things like, "Just power tripping, and she's acting like one of those insane moms from those Reddit AITA stories." But slowly, the calls changed. I heard him asking about job openings. I heard him Googling roommates near me and shared housing cheap. I heard reality starting to sink in. On the 5th day, he knocked on my door. His voice was quieter. "I got a job," he said. This wasn't glamorous, a warehouse position. Early morning shifts, but it was real. "Okay? And I found a room in a shared house," he added. It's not great, but his voice trailed off. For the first time in a long time, he looked humbled. I nodded. I'm proud of you for taking steps, I said. I really am. But remember, Ethan, this is how it should have been years ago. You're capable. You've just never had to be, because I kept jumping in. He looked at me, and for a second I saw that little boy who used to cling to my leg. Then he looked away. You could have told me no earlier, he muttered. It wasn't an apology, but it wasn't a threat either. It's honest, in a twisted way. I know, I said. That's my part in this. I enabled you. I thought love meant saving you from every consequence. But love also means letting you grow up, even if it hurts. On the 7th day, he packed his bag. At the door, he hesitated. I still think you went too far, he said. Cutting me off like that? Letting me get evicted. My heart tightened, but I didn't flinch. I didn't make you miss rent, I said quietly. I just stopped paying it for you. He didn't answer. He just nodded once, gave me a short, stiff hug, and left. It's been a year since then. We're not the happy, picture-perfect family you see on greeting cards. We're cautious. We talk sometimes. He'll text me a meme, or ask how I'm feeling, or send a photo of a meal he cooked. He pays his own bills now. He still struggles, but he's learning. And more importantly, I'm not drowning anymore. Every once in a while, I stumble across Reddit stories about entitled people, toxic family, or revenge stories where a parent cuts off a grown child and lets them fail. The comments are always wild. People scream bad parent, others cheer and call it satisfying revenge. The truth, at least for me, lives somewhere in the messy middle. It wasn't about punishing my son. It was about finally stepping out of a role that was killing me. My revenge wasn't dramatic or explosive. There was no big public expose, no viral call-out. My revenge was a quiet decision made in my living room with nobody watching. I would no longer pay for a grown man's choices. I would let him fail so he had a chance to finally learn how to stand. And in the process, I gave myself something I hadn't had in years: peace. If you're watching this, maybe you see yourself in me. Maybe you're the parent who keeps giving or the adult child who keeps asking. Maybe you're somewhere in between, trying to figure out what love looks like when money, sacrifice, and resentment are all tangled together. There's no simple answer. No one-size-fits-all rule like in some Reddit AITA thread. But this was mine. Let me know in the comments, what would you have done in this situation? And don't forget to subscribe to Golden Years Diary for more stories like this.